Hi, my name is Rebecca. I'm a graduate of Ghana Christian International High School. I urge you all to subscribe to His.TV. Thank you.
Hello there, you're welcome to my channel. In today's video, I would like us to take a look at one of the Anglo-Asante wars which was fought in the 19th century. In our previous lessons or video, we looked at the reasons for the Anglo-Asante wars, the reasons that accounted for the several wars fought between the British and the Asantes. And so in today's lesson, I would like us to look at one of such wars, an example of such Anglo-Asante war, which is the Sagrenti War of 1873 to 1874. And that is going to be our first subtopic. Then we take a look at the Treaty of Fomena, which was also signed after the war was fought. And so basically, this is what all this lesson is about. But before we begin with our lesson objectives for today, I would like to remind you to subscribe to our channel if you are new, and if you have already subscribed, we thank you very much for your support. Share our link on other social media platforms. So let's begin with our lesson objectives. So our lesson objectives for today will be that by the end of this lesson, you should be able to examine the Sagrenti War of 1873-1874, especially the causes of the war. And also, you should be able to state the terms of the Treaty of Fomena, which was signed after the war was fought. And so basically, these two objectives is what is going to guide us in our discussions today. So let's begin our lesson objectives with the Sagrenti War. Now, we have already indicated that Asante and the British fought on several occasions. And one of such wars, as I have already said, was the Sagrenti War in 1874. Now, these wars were fought basically because Asante wanted to maintain their independence, okay, also to maintain their empire and also autonomous, existence. They wanted to be free, and so they clashed with the British on several occasions. And one of such encounters was the Sagrenti War of 1873 to 1874. Now, the question then is, why was this war fought? Now, this war was one of the devastating wars that Asante ever fought with the British. It led to, huge losses on both sides. So the question is, why was this war fought between the British and the Asante? Now, this war came about as a result of an invasion, an Asante invasion, which was conducted by Kofi Kakari, the then Asante at that time. Now, the war came about as a result of Asante invasion of the coast in 1873, after the death of the then Asante Kweku Dua I. His successor, Kofi Kakari, invaded the coast in order to recapture Elmina, which later came under the British control after the Dutch had left the country. And so the attempt to retake Elmina by the Asante provoked the British administration in action. So in 1873, Kofi Kakari, the Asante at that time, invaded the coast in order to retake Elmina, which then means that Elmina initially belonged to the Asante. Now, why would Kofi Kakari move from Asante, Kumasi, to march to the coast and fight for Elmina, or to retake Elmina? Now, in 1867, there was a convention or an agreement signed between the Dutch and then the British. And this agreement was to exchange forts and castles along the coast, okay? And so the Dutch were going to take all the forts and castles east of Elmina Castle, or the Sweet River in Kakum. And then also the British were also to take all the forts and castles to the west of the the Sweet River. Now, that agreement or that convention was not successful, and so at a point the Dutch were fed up, and so they decided to leave the Gold Coast, back to their country. And so all the forts along the coast now came under the British control. Now, what that meant was that Asante was now going to be denied of Elmina. Initially, before the agreement took place, Elmina was a Dutch fort, and so Elmina or the Dutch were actually paying land rent to the Asantehene in Kumasi. It means that Elmina was a vassal state to the Asante kingdom, all right? And so Asantehene had power over Elmina, and especially over the port, the castle. So when the exchange, happened, and it caused a whole lot of issues, especially with the bombardment of commander who didn't want to be under, of course, the Dutch and all of that. So that caused a lot of problems. So the Dutch then decided to leave the coast. So now that the Dutch left the coast, Elmina now came to be under the British. Now, Elmina was the source of gunpowder. Asantes bought guns and gunpowder from Elmina, and therefore they losing Elmina to the British, of course, meant that they were not going to get access to their gun and gunpowders. Initially, when the Dutch were there, they were able to get access to these things because the Dutch actually were not interested in colonization, so they only traded with Asante, and the Dutch had been a traditional ally of Asante for a very long time, so they didn't have any problem with the Dutch. But with the British coming to take over Elmina, meant that the British were going to stop selling guns and ammunition to Asante, and that would be a big blow to the Asante kingdom. And therefore, Kofi Kakari then decided to march to the coast, to retake Elmina back, and that provoked the British to invade Asante in 1874, just the following year after Kofi Kakari invaded Elmina. Now let's take a look at the war. Actually, so in order to break the Asante's resilience, the British Army under the commander of Sir Garnet Woseley stormed Kumasi and engaged Asante in a fierce battle. So the British forces were led by the commander called Sir Garnet Woseley, and after the war, because the Asantes could not pronounce his name well, the war was named after him. So the Sagrenti War, Asantes pronounced Sir as Sa. So the Sagrenti War is the corrupted of Sir Garnet Woseley War. Okay, and that is why it is known as the Sagrenti War. Now, the British Army was under the commander of Sir Garnet Woseley, whereas the Asante Army was under the commander of the Bantamahene known as Amankwetia, and they even have a song, sung to praise him for the work that he did on that day. So Asante was defeated in that war, and following that defeat, the British forced, they captured Kumasi, they burnt it as well. After the war, the British signed the Fomena Treaty with Asante. Now, that war was very, very devastating. Asante was defeated in the war. Kumasi was actually burnt down. The palace, the Menshia Palace at that time, or the Asantehene's palace at that time, was burnt down by the British forces. Now, if you read some accounts, it tells you that the Asantes actually they left Kumasi, so the British were able to sack the whole of Kumasi. Asantes left Kumasi. There is a video that a play which was performed during the 150 years of the celebration of the Sagrenti War, I think last month, February. Let's take a look at that video, how Asantes were defeated in that video, and then we shall continue with the Treaty of Fomena. However, if you want to get the full video of the video, you can check that in the description. I'll leave the link there. So let's watch the video. Okay, so that was just a short video to the Sagrenti War, how the war was fought, and this video was actually performed, as I earlier indicated, at the 150 years for celebration of the Sagrenti War last month in February 2023. for. So that is that. If you want to watch the full video or the full play, I'll put the link under this video so that you can have that for yourself. So now let's then continue with our discussions. So after the war, the Asantes were defeated. Kumasi was burnt down, and the British left. So there was then a treaty. In those days, after every war, a treaty is signed, and that is going to be the basis on which the two parties are going to relate to each other. Now, this treaty was actually drafted in Fomena, in the Adansi area, in the Ashanti region. So the treaty was drafted in Fomena. However, it was signed in Cape Coast, but it was drafted. The agreement was drafted in Fomena, and therefore the name or the treaty was called the Fomena Treaty. Now let's take a look at the terms in the Fomena Treaty. First, the first term in the Fomena Treaty or agreement in the Fomena Treaty was that the Asante was to pay an indemnity, war fine of 50,000 ounces of gold to the British. So Asante was to pay a war fine indemnity, and a war fine simply means the cost of the war. In those days, the one who loses will pay for the cost of the war, and so Asante was asked to pay a war fine of 50,000 ounces of gold to the British. Okay, the next of the agreement or the terms in the treaty was that all the vassal states of Asante south of River Pra were to be granted their independence. Examples were the Denchira people, the Asin people, the Achim people, as well as the Adansi people. All these states were vassal states to the Asante, and they were asked by the British to grant them independence, which then means that some people actually gained independence from the Asante's rule. And that is quite interesting, that Asante was actually forced to grant independence to some states in Ghana, even before the whole country, Ghana, decided or began to even struggle against colonial rule for the whole country to also gain independence. So it's quite interesting. Now, Asante was to renounce her claim to Elmina and its allied tribes. So you see that now the British are warning the Asantes that they should renounce their claim to Elmina. They shouldn't claim that Elmina belongs to them anymore, and that Elmina ceased to be a vassal state of Asante, or Elmina ceased to be a state that fall under the Asante kingdom. The next one was that Asante was to withdraw his troops from the coastal areas and keep the trade routes open. So Asante was to keep the trade routes open and withdrew all his troops from the coastal areas. These troops were actually stationed in the coastal areas to protect Asante traders who were trading along the coast, all right? And they were in some instances intimidating other traders, and also to keep the trade routes open, that everybody should be allowed to trade with the for the British. Now the next or the last one has to do with human sacrifices. Asante was to stop human sacrifice, and this is one of the biggest achievement that I would always say for that the British did in terms of social, trying to stop or let the people stop human sacrifice. And human sacrifice was part of the Asante customs and traditions, where when they feel right to sacrifice somebody, they did. And so the British found this as being a barbaric custom, and therefore decided to do away with human sacrifices. So if any Asante king was caught, he was going to be punished by the British. Now, the Treaty of Fomena then came to replace the Treaty of 1831, which had been signed by Maclean, 1831 tripartite, treaty, as the basis of relations between the British and Asante. And so that is some of the terms of the Treaty of Fomena. I believe you have been educated and you have learned something. You can share your view, your comments, anything about the Sagrenti War and the Treaty of Fomena in the comment section. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel, and also if you have any questions, you can also comment and we will respond to you. Thank you very much for your time and have a nice day. Bye.